Assalamu alaikum everyone. So this is some Muslim kid with you, and today I want to talk about Prophet Sheath and the nightlife. Before all that, we're gonna have to go back in time and just get a little recap on history, and you'll see how it all ties in. All right. So Prophet Sheath alayhi salam, or Prophet Seth, he is the son of Adam, right? Adam alayhi salam, and he is a prophet, not as popular as the rest because he's not mentioned in the Quran. However, he is mentioned in Hadith narrations. So as you all know, the story of Qabil and Habil, right? And Habil had to get killed by the hands of Qabil. And after that, Allah replaced the dead son of Adam alayhi salam with Sheeth. And so Sheeth was a righteous man, and he eventually became the prophet, and he carried out the message of Adam alayhi salam. And so after his death by a while, what happened was there was two communities that just showed up all of a sudden. And what's interesting in the nature of Sheeth alayhi salam and his story is that it's very different if you compare it to the other prophets that we know about. Because at the end of the day, every other prophet, the battle goes down to two ideologies, belief and disbelief. However, with Sheeth alayhi salam, it was more about two believers, two believing groups. They all believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They all believed that Allah is one. They believed in the day of judgment. It was not debatable, right? When you think about it, your father or your grandfather was the oldest man on this whole planet, right? And you're the only living human beings, and your grandfather is straight up telling you well, we know where we came from. Allah sent us down here. This is exactly how it was. Adam alayhi salam and Hawa, they had them, and they were the testimony to the beginning of creation, And so it was all very logical what the truth was. So at the time, believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was not actually that difficult. It was pretty much straightforward. The whole community at the time were actually, you can say, believers. There was just some people that disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knowingly that He is out there, and there was others that actually obeyed Him, and that was the division. It was division between believers, obeying believers and disobeying believers. So what happened was the people that were actually disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they decided to go on the dark side of things, they were actually led by Qabil, right? The one who actually killed Habil. Because he didn't repent, he just regretted his sin that he killed him, but he just despaired of Allah's mercy and kept going. So it became darker, he had his own community, and these people were actually situated, below the mountains. And the right believers who were with Prophet Sheath alayhi salam were actually above. They were on top of the mountains. So it was very symbolic in nature as well. They have the good people above and the bad people below. So these people at the bottom were actually the source of all temptations. Because, I'm not going to go too much into that aspect of that story, but, briefly putting it, Shaitan came in and he just gave them all the assets they needed to make basically the most shameless environment they can at the time. And one of those assets were music, inspirations of having adultery with men and women, and beautifying oneself. So all these ideas just starting emerging from Shaitan at the time. And these people were filled of it. It was almost like a concert every week, like a Saturday. You have the music, you have the girls, you have the beauty, you have the shamelessness, you have the inclinations to actually hook up. All these things were present. But what makes this interesting now is that these people were very loud. So the people on the top of the mountain would hear all these things. So they would hear this music, they would hear the women, and they would go down and look at them. And then they were like, whoa, this is crazy. This looks insane. Even though they know it's wrong. And the law of the time was that they had to follow was that there must be no interaction between these people and these people, because if they do interact, then clearly what's going to happen is you're gonna just spoil yourself, spoil your soul, because they're gonna lose all that purity that they tried to keep for so long. And under Prophet Sheath alayhi salam, they had to stay with him in order to keep that purity, to keep that obedience with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala present. So the moment they started looking down the mountains, this loud music and the girls dancing and all that, obviously was very alluring to them, and it was almost very tempting. So they decided to just, let's just go ahead and try it. And some of them actually slipped. So this is what we know in the narrations, that some of them slipped, and then the next day, and they would tell their believing brothers and sisters, we hooked up and we did that, and they just started to suck them into their own world of complete shamelessness. Now, this is just the history recap. Now, what's the point of all this? What am I saying? If we look at the nightlife today, when you think about the people below the mountain, they made such a noise that they became noticeable and they started sucking people in. Today, this happens exactly the same way. However, the circumstances are different, right? Fundamentally, the sins are always the same. It was always music. It was always women. It was always about temptation. These things are, again, they're just the same fundamentals. And that's why when you think about there is no prophets anymore, it's because every single sin in its foundation, it has already been dealt with in the past. So when we look at Sheeth alayhi salam, he is pretty much the epitome of what a nightlife does to a community, right? So when you look at today, we do make a lot of noise. Maybe the clubs are contained within buildings. However, we're still very loud. But how do we do that? We have our Instagrams, we have our Facebooks. When we go to the club or when we go do something, a very corrupt objective, because I had conversations and people that are vulnerable, that are trying to stay on the straight path, and then they have these, distractions around them. People like on their Instagram. Nowadays, we can have a very loud Instagram post. And these things do kind of affect other people. And this is what the point of this history is that whenever we talk about people below the mountain, people that are not taking their religion seriously, not practicing well enough, and they would always tell me, well, our religion is a private life, and that's fine. I'm not going to force you, and there's no compulsion, right? But at the end of the day, what has to be clear is that your choices affects others, whether you like it or not. When you go and dress up in a certain way and you're going to these places, you think it's contained in the buildings, no one's going to see anything. But the truth is people will see you, and they wonder, and they question themselves, and they doubt themselves, and they doubt their positions on these sort of things. And then the next thing you know is that he's joining you in the club the next week, right? And when we don't talk about anything except these sort of things, it gets to people. We're human beings at the end of the day, and you will eventually bring more people following you without knowing. And these people, you will have their wizard, right? Their wizard as in their burden of their sins also on top of you, because you're the one who led them to this path in the first place. Generally, this is the kind of problems I actually notice within the Muslim community, is that we don't help each other anymore. In the Quran, we're talked about as the best of people out there that call for the good and forbid the evil. But today, with the way I see it, it's actually a very scary reality. If you talk about the words of zina or fahsha, like shamelessness and adultery, these words are now almost foreign to some kids. It's not like we don't even talk about these words anymore. It's almost like non-existent. And this is exactly what history has shown us, is like the devil used the people below the mountain to exploit them, to bring people down from up there. He knew these people were lost, but he needed them to attract. The point is, you need to do this in order for other men who were supposedly righteous above the mountain, they would come and look and okay, I'm losing it tonight. That's the idea that I'm trying to convey, is that whether you tell me you have a private life and you're just not religious enough, if you're a Muslim and you are doing this knowingly, just understand that you will have consequences on the other people. Today, on top of the mountain, today the people that actually don't do these things and they try to have their own, outlooks and saying, no, this is wrong, I don't want to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I respect his laws. What you should benefit from this video is that inspire yourself, because you're just carrying out a legacy of Prophet Sheath and his followers in the beginning of time. We're talking about the son of Adam, literally the son of Adam, not us, metaphorically the sons of Adam. And that, to me, I think that's beautiful, to know that you're carrying a legacy from such a long time ago through Allah's guidance. And that's how Allah's guidance is almost like, laysa lahu iwaj. There's no crookedness in it. You'll always find it just absolutely at a high standard throughout all times. Maybe there is some changes, but in the end of the day, the fundamental of the sins, they're the same. The human being does not get creative in terms of sinning. The nightlife at the time was literally fueled by the factors I mentioned, and they are still fueled by these same factors today. We don't get creative. We just make things louder. We make things more beautiful. But the sins don't change, because Shaitan, Allah talks about it, that his plot is weak. It's predictable. So just next time you even think about, citing your morals for one night or for a week, think about how this can inspire you and how you should actually stand your ground. Because there's people that did fail in the past, but there's people that didn't go and they sit up there in the mountain as well with Prophet Sheath alayhi salam. So this is not a bedtime story I can tell to my kid. I can tell this story to a 20-year-old and he'll still find guidance. And that is the point of the Prophet's stories. They're not something to be just amazed about and get all these lovey-dovey feeling inside. There's wisdom in them. And this is just one of the ways I found Prophet Sheath alayhi salam to be very relevant today to Muslims, and I hope you can take benefit from that. Again, I'm not a scholar or anything. I'm just basically reflecting on a video I watched from Mufti Menk and I think Bilal, Assad. I'll put the links below, so check them if you want to look the actual source. I'm just adding my reflection. I'm not putting anything out of my head here. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.